Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today we have some Star Wars news that is potentially very huge, actually. So basically what happened is that Disney had a shareholders meeting today where the public could listen into this meeting on their website, and Bob Chapek, the CEO of Walt Disney, was asked if they were going to be firing Kathleen Kennedy and putting Dave Filoni in charge. And here's actually what Bob Chapek said. He says, "We look forward to having Kathy directing the activities of the entire Lucasfilm operation for many years to come." That's what he said. Okay, so first of all, the fact that that question was asked is kind of crazy on its own. Within the fan base of Star Wars, of course, Kathleen Kennedy's leadership has been divisive, to say the least. And, you know, it's a hot button subject. Everyone has their own opinions on Kathleen Kennedy and the different decisions that she's made. But the fact that this was asked at a shareholders meeting is pretty crazy. And let's actually talk about the significance of exactly his response and what it implies, because the exact phrasing here is very important. Operations for many years to come. The reason that's important is because if you guys remember, back in 2018, September of 2018, Kathleen Kennedy's contract got extended for 3 years, which means this September of 2021 is supposed to be the end of that 3-year extension. If nothing were to be announced of her getting another extension or anything like that, then we would essentially be looking for a new Lucasfilm president. But, his comments today, Bob Chapek's comments, essentially seem to imply that there's going to be another extension of her contract. Now, of course, this is not an official confirmation. There has not been anything said about her contract. However, I suspect that the closer we get to the later half of the year, when her contract's extension would end, we will be hearing some sort of official word of that contract being extended for a second time. And if that were to happen, which I think it's pretty probable, I suspect it would be another 3 years, and they would probably follow those same increments for however long they decide to do this. Now, that's pretty significant on its own. Obviously, again, I want to point this out. This is not an official confirmation that this is actually happening, but the fact that he said for years to come, clearly, at least in Bob Chapek's mind, this is not ending this year. Because again, the whole aspect of her being fired and replaced, they wouldn't have to really do that at all, because her contract's over this year in September, or at least somewhere around that end part of the year. So yeah, it definitely seems that not only is he backing Kathleen Kennedy in regards to other questions about actresses who have been fired or let go, at least from Lucasfilm, he's even going as far as saying, like, no, we're gonna work with her for years at Lucasfilm. So okay, again, everyone has their opinions on this, and depending on who you are, this is either a horrible thing, or it's a wonderful thing, or it's just fine, like it doesn't change anything. I think I'm kind of in that camp where it's fine, like it's whatever. It doesn't really change anything in regards to the situation. A lot of people seem to be under this belief that if Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni were to take over as president, everything at Lucasfilm would shift drastically, but that's not really the case, to be honest. In fact, I think if a new president were to come in, you probably wouldn't notice any major changes for the first several years. Things would pretty much feel the same, because it's pretty much all the same people at Lucasfilm, other than that one person changing. So I want to get that out of the way. The idea that Kathleen Kennedy is going to leave and everything magically changes and everything's different or something, that's just not realistic. That's not how things work. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. I'll say this, okay? I'm going to give my personal viewpoint on the whole Kathleen Kennedy criticism and the way she's kind of treated on the internet. Look, I think that there are plenty of valid and, some significant criticisms you can, lay at her feet and say, like, this was kind of your doing, or at the very least, you had some measure of control over how this played out. I would say the amount of directors and writers who have left projects. I would say the marketing of Solo and its release date. I'm aware that Bob Iger shares some responsibility in some of these, like Solo. But there's other things like the way that the sequel trilogy kind of played out, the whether or not how much of a plan there ever was. There are things that I think you can look at Kathleen Kennedy and say, hey, you kind of dropped the ball several times here. However, when I look at the reaction on the internet, when I see some of the honestly just horrible things that I've seen people say about her, it's gotten to this point where people are not just criticizing Kathleen Kennedy for things she might have made mistakes in, or questioning her leadership. It's gotten to the point where people are treating her as if she's some kind of satanic figure now, and that's where I'm like drawing the line, because I'm like, okay, look, even if you don't like the new movies, even if you don't like the direction the company's been headed in, okay, and this is kind of where I go back to the whole Zack Snyder verse of the DCEU and what's going on over there with all the DC movies, where it's like, okay, I don't like those movies, they're not for me, they don't, it's not how I would prefer this all be going down. And even outside of Zack Snyder, just in general, everything over there is just kind of really messy, very similar to how other people view the Star Wars movies happening. But I'm not out there with a pitchfork saying Zack Snyder never needs to work again and he needs to do this, or Jeff Johns needs to go to hell or something. Like, it's just, you kind of just say, okay, well, it's not for me, all right, and you move on with your life. Anyways, my point is, the vitriol has gotten so extreme against Kathleen Kennedy that it's difficult to have a meaningful conversation about valid criticisms, because you're seeing these insane extremes of people emotionally lashing out in anger and foaming at the mouth. And it's like, okay, we can talk about things Kathleen Kennedy's done wrong, but if you're just gonna go insane about it, we can't have the conversation, and my other thing is, you also have to talk about the things Kathleen Kennedy has done right. There are these true, look, I've covered this on my YouTube channel before, but there are clearly a tidal wave of people who claim to have sources and don't, claim to know leaks and know people inside Lucasfilm, when in reality they're just creating these scoops in their head, in their imagination. They talk about a war inside Lucasfilm, and yet Kathleen Kennedy is still powerful enough to fire an actress, even though there's supposedly a power struggle going on. But Kathleen Kennedy still seems to have all the power, so there's not much of a power struggle going on then, is there? My point being, there's a lot of people on the internet who say things that are simply not true, and if you put away your emotions, despite how you may feel about this producer or this president of a company, you can use your logic brain and say, no, this doesn't actually make any sense, okay? A lot of people said Kathleen Kennedy was getting fired 3 years ago. She wasn't. A lot of people are saying Kathleen Kennedy was getting fired this year. It doesn't look like that's happening either. So just be, in general, stop believing everything you hear on the internet, even if it's something you want to hear. That doesn't make it true. And Kathleen Kennedy is not the devil, okay? She's not going out of her way to ruin this franchise. She cares about this franchise. She's trying to do her job and do its best. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with what she's done, but stop trying to make her out to be this, like, mythical evil figure who's out to destroy your childhood. It's weird. And you make it harder to actually have a genuine conversation about things that she may have gotten wrong and things that she might have gotten right. And another example of that is The Mandalorian. People started making up these weird rumors about Kathleen Kennedy is not responsible for The Mandalorian, and she has nothing to do with that project, and she's not allowed on the set, which is ridiculous, because as we've seen through recent events, Kathleen Kennedy has enough power to literally fire anyone on that set, and she can demolish the whole thing tomorrow if she wanted. She is the president of the company. Okay, she's not a hired gun. She's not like a hired producer. She is the president. She is in charge of the company. Do you understand that? So this whole idea of like she's not allowed on the set, it's like, no, she owns the set. Don't be mistaken here. You know, and so the things that you like out of The Mandalorian, just because you like this and you didn't like that, and some part of your brain doesn't want to give Kathleen Kennedy credit for the thing you like, but you still want to blame her for the thing you didn't like, that, you know, you have to still use logic there. She is responsible for The Mandalorian, and she's also responsible for the sequel trilogy. Both of those things fall under her umbrella of responsibility. Okay, so, you know, even if you love one and you hate the other or whatever, you know, you have to treat this with equal value here. You can't just like pick and choose when logic applies. My point being, Kathleen Kennedy is a human being who's made mistakes, made decisions that I don't agree with. Things have definitely not been as smooth as I think they should have been, but she's also not the Antichrist. She's not trying to demolish the franchise, okay? She is a person who's doing her best, doing her job, and for all we know, there's not a whole lot of better people out there. Maybe the job is much more difficult than we realize. Maybe all these things that we're trying to blame her on are actually factors outside of her control. You know, that's kind of what happens in show business, where thousands of people are involved and a pandemic strikes, and you know, you're under an even larger umbrella company that has, you know, a competing franchise but also a sister franchise in the Marvel universe, you know, so it's like, it's very complicated. So it's I don't know. All I'm trying to say is, you don't have to like Kathleen Kennedy, you don't have to agree with her choices. It's okay to admit the things that she's done right, as well as admit the things that she's done wrong. And this hyperbolic insanity that you see online is what makes it so difficult to just talk like normal people and be like, hey, you know, she's done some good things, she's done some bad things, let's, you know, and she's probably gonna stay on Lucasfilm. You know, Dave Filoni, he wants to keep doing his thing. He wants to make the Bad Batch. He wants to make The Mandalorian and this whole Filoniverse thing on Disney+. Dave Filoni doesn't want to have to sit behind a desk and take meetings with board members for, you know, 14 hours a day. That's not what Dave Filoni wants to do. Jon Favreau is a creative also, okay? He's right there with Dave Filoni wanting to write stuff down. Jon Favreau is writing seasons of Mandalorian. You think he wants to sit behind a desk somewhere? No. Kathleen Kennedy is the person who sits behind the desk. And that's all I'm saying. So if you're gonna foam at the mouth and go crazy about this because you despise her, because some other YouTuber has convinced you that she's pushing some political devil-fueled agenda and she's gonna blah 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 blah, just try to use your logic brain for a second. You don't have to like what she's done. You don't have to like these new movies. You don't have to do anything. But you also don't have to go crazy. You know? So anyways, that's all I gotta say about Kathleen Kennedy. Okay, she has a great track record. She's done some things that I'm like, oh, you kind of dropped the ball there, and you messed up this or whatever. This should have been done better. But also, she's done some great things. And let's be honest, we're talking about Star Wars a lot more in 2021 than we were in 2012, where Star Wars was, you know, let's face it, it was essentially one TV show, and that was it. That's all the franchise was at that point. You know, a TV show and some books. And now it's much more than that. So I don't know. That's all I'm trying to say is, she does not get the credit she deserves, but she also, it's okay to also allow her to take the blame where the blame is deserved. You know, it's about balance, right? You have to be balanced. If you go full dark side, then you're an insane person, really. And if you go full light side, then you're not being realistic. So balance yourself. That's all I'm trying to say. Anyways, it looks like she's gonna get an extension. That seems what's probably gonna happen. That's, you know, there's no other way to really interpret his comments here. But again, it's not official yet. Who knows? Anything could happen by the end of the year. We're only in, March? So, I don't know. All I'm saying is, it looks like it's heading in that direction. And if it is, that's okay. Because like I said, even if someone else came in, it's like, oh, Kathleen Kennedy's gone. It's not a magic wand. You know, you still have thousands of the same people who were there yesterday will still be there the day after. It's not, you know, like one person coming in is not gonna magically like, woo, everything has changed now. You know, do you think that someone coming in, what, they're gonna erase the sequels and they're gonna erase all the shows and erase all the books and all the comics that all tied into it? No, they're not. That's not happening. So I don't know. The internet needs to calm down, be realistic, be balanced. And anyways, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this news. Let me know what you guys think you want to see happen. If you don't like Kathleen Kennedy, again, that's okay. You just gotta be balanced. And if you love Kathleen Kennedy, that's okay, but you gotta be realistic. So, okay. All right, we can all get along? We can all get along? Okay. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye.